Every manipulative question is a disguised blow of interest. It doesn't come with screams or insults. It arrives subtly, with a tone that pretends to be innocent but seeks to disarm you from within. Why are you so nervous? Don't you trust me? What if everything is in your head? These phrases do not seek clarity. They seek to sow doubt, weaken your security, and make you feel guilty for something that is not even yours. Here we are not talking about simple words. We are talking about psychological traps that, if you do not recognize them, can lead you to justify yourself over and over again until you lose your center. Because the real poison is not in the question, but in the reaction it rips from you. If you fall into the game, you get trapped. If you respond with anxiety or anger, the manipulator wins. Stoicism teaches another route. You do not need to explain your worth or defend your dignity at every moment. Your strength is not in convincing, but in maintaining calm when they seek to destabilize you. Epictetus said that no one can hurt you without your consent, and that is the key. Learning to stand firm even when words are used as weapons. This video is not empty theory. It is a practical guide to recognize these traps and respond with attitudes that anyone can apply in daily life. Here it is not about becoming cold, but about learning to be the master of your mind, your silence, and your inner clarity. Stay until the end, because what you are going to discover is how to turn every attempt at manipulation into a training field for your emotional strength. 1. Why are you so nervous? A predator never attacks head-on. It hides in the shadows, waits for the exact moment, and launches its attack subtly. This is also how certain manipulative questions work. They don't come as an obvious roar, but as a whisper disguised as innocence. Why are you so nervous? Seems harmless, but behind those words hides the intention to destabilize you, to make you feel inferior, insecure, small. The manipulator knows that if he can make you doubt yourself, he doesn't need to do anything else, because you end up weakening yourself. This question is one of the favorite weapons of those who seek to have power over others, because it plays with your credibility and your confidence. If you respond with anxiety, if you justify yourself, if you try to prove that you are not nervous, you fall into their game. You give the other person the authority to define your emotional state, as if your serenity needed external approval. This is where Stoicism becomes vital. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul strengthens when it learns to ignore what does not depend on it. And your nervousness, real or invented by the gaze of the other, should not be used against you, because it has nothing to do with your essence or your value. The real focus in the face of this trap is not to deny yourself in desperation, but to demonstrate with your attitude that you are not willing to give away your peace. You can choose silence as a response, letting the discomfort return to the one who tried to sow it. You can respond calmly, setting a limit with few words, without justifying yourself, without extending explanations. Because when you justify yourself, you confirm the accusation. When you stand firm, you expose the manipulation. Seneca said that the greatest power is to master oneself. And here, that lesson becomes a weapon. If someone asks you, "Why are you so nervous?" you can calmly answer, "I'm fine," and not give more space to manipulation. Or even not respond at all, because you are not obligated to clarify what has no basis. Silence at that moment is not weakness, it is authority. It is to show that you do not need anyone's validation to feel confident about what you say or do. The point is not to eliminate nerves, because we all feel them at some point. The point is that they do not become a chain that others can pull at their convenience. The manipulator wants your mind to get tangled, for you to get defensive, for you to enter his territory. But a Stoic understands that the battle is not outside, it is within you. And if you manage to stay serene, if you understand that the question has no real power, then there is nothing to fear. Every time someone says to you, "Why are you so nervous?" remember that what they are looking for is to plant the seed of doubt. Do not water it with your explanations. Do not give them your balance. Use that situation as an exercise to strengthen your self-control, to remind you that whoever controls their emotions will never be dominated. Because in the end, the real answer is not in convincing the other, it is in standing firm, in being the master of your calm, and in showing that your peace is not for sale. This is the first step to disarm the traps of manipulation. Understand that words can be knives disguised as questions, and that your best defense is not to react with fear, but to hold your mind firmly and let the poison stay in the mouth of the one who threw it. 2. Don't you trust me? Trust is like glass, transparent and shiny, but at the same time fragile. Once someone tries to manipulate you with this question, they're not doing it to take care of that glass. They do it to throw it against the ground and blame you afterwards for the cracks. Don't you trust me? Is not seeking an honest answer. It seeks to sow guilt, to make you feel like you're the one failing for not giving your blind trust. It's a trap because it puts the focus on you, when in reality the doubt arises from the other person's behavior. Whoever uses this question wants to tie you emotionally, push you to lower your defenses as if trust was an obligation and not a choice. If you fall into the game, you end up giving ground and setting aside your boundaries because nobody wants to carry the label of distrustful or cold. However, Stoicism teaches that true trust is not given under pressure, it is earned with consistent acts. Epictetus warned that we should not hand over our judgment to others, and here that teaching becomes clear. If someone demands trust with words and not with deeds, what they want is not connection, but control. Responding to this trap requires inner clarity. It is not necessary to react with hostility or submission. It is about maintaining calm and returning responsibility to where it belongs. Trust is not a blank check that someone can claim by force, it is a process that is built. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that a person's dignity is measured in how they remain true to their nature, and that implies not allowing your mind to be dragged by manipulation disguised as affection. Faced with this question, you can respond calmly without falling into extensive explanations that make you look guilty. A simple "trust is demonstrated with deeds, not with words" is enough to expose the intention behind that phrase. You can also opt for firm silence, which makes it clear that you are not going to enter a territory that does not correspond. Because trust is not imposed or torn away, it is earned. And if someone needs to question you to get it, maybe they have already shown that they do not deserve it. Seneca said that there is no greater freedom than not depending on what others think of you. Applied to this case, it means that you do not need to prove your trust to anyone, much less to someone who uses manipulation as a tool. Your worth does not depend on convincing another of your loyalty. It depends on being consistent with yourself and with what you know is fair. The key is to remember that the question is not sincere. It does not seek to know you better, it seeks to disarm you. If you feel obliged to respond with a "of course I trust you," they will have achieved what they wanted, your surrender. But if you understand that your trust is yours and that only you decide when to give it, you regain control of the situation. Every time someone throws this kind of trap at you, use it as a training to reinforce your boundaries. Do not fear silence. Do not fear discomfort. The real mistake is not to distrust, it is to give away your inner security just for fear of disappointing. And if you remember Stoicism at that moment, you will understand that trust is not negotiated under pressure. It is offered when the other person proves they deserve it. This is how you face this question. With firmness, with clarity, and with the conviction that your peace is worth more than any manipulation disguised as affection. 3. Are you sure about what you're saying? Doubt is like a drop that hits the same stone over and over again. It doesn't need to be strong, just constant, until it ends up wearing down the surface. This is how this manipulative question acts. It doesn't come to clarify a topic, it comes to pierce your confidence. Are you sure about what you're saying? Seems like an innocent query, but in reality, it's a poisoned dart aiming to make you wobble, intending to put your conviction in check and make you feel that perhaps you made a mistake, even when you know you're right. The manipulator doesn't need solid arguments. Sowing uncertainty is enough. If they manage to make you hesitate, they've already won. Because whoever doubts themselves weakens, loses their voice and firmness. This is where Stoicism shows its value, reminding you that confidence doesn't depend on convincing the other, but on being aligned with your own reason. Marcus Aurelius said that a calm mind is strong because it doesn't let itself be dragged by external noises. That's the key. Don't confuse others' doubt with a truth that strips you of your confidence. When someone throws this question, the first reaction is usually to justify every word, as if your worth depended on proving that your memory, your perception, or your argument are flawless. But this reaction only feeds the trap. The best response is not to enter an endless game of explanations, but to stand firm. A Stoic doesn't cling to the need to always have the last word, but neither allows their conviction to be snatched away with empty insinuations. Epictetus taught that things in themselves do not disturb us, but the interpretations we make of them. Applied here, what hurts is not the question, but how you decide to receive it. If you take it as a direct attack and desperately try to defend yourself, you wear yourself out. If you look at it calmly and understand that it has no real weight, you regain your power. You can respond with few words, with a firm yes, without embellishments, or even with a silence that discomforts the manipulator more than you. Because the real message is not in the length of your answer, but in the serenity with which you deliver it. Seneca reminded us that he who masters his emotions is invulnerable. And this question precisely targets your emotions, the insecurity we all carry within. The challenge is not to allow external doubt to feed your own fragility. Trust in your facts, in your memory, in what you know is real. Even if you happen to be wrong, that doesn't invalidate your worth or your dignity. The mistake is part of the journey, but allowing another to use doubt as a weapon to control you is an avoidable defeat. The next time someone tries to disarm you with this question, don't fall into the trap of justifying every little detail. Stand your ground. Remember that your security is not in constantly proving that you're right, but in maintaining your clarity even when they try to cloud it. You don't need to raise your voice. You don't need to prolong the defense. You need to demonstrate with your calmness that you don't yield your center. This is how you deactivate this manipulation. Understanding that others' doubt is like that persistent drop, but you're not the stone that allows itself to be worn down. You're the rock that stands firm because it doesn't fear the water. And when you manage to respond with that silent conviction, you will have turned the trap into an opportunity to strengthen your mind and your resilience. 4. Why do you always attack me? Fire, when it ignites in the middle of a dry field, doesn't need much to spread. A single spark is enough for everything around to seem guilty of the blaze. This is how this manipulative question works. Why do you always attack me? It doesn't seek justice. It seeks to ignite in you the feeling of being the aggressor, even when all you did was defend your position or express a disagreement. The trick is simple. Reverse the roles to put you in the dock and thus evade their own responsibility. The manipulator knows that if they get you to justify yourself, the conversation is already lost. You start to explain that you weren't attacking, that your intention wasn't to hurt, that you were simply expressing an opinion. At that moment, you shift the focus of the situation and start defending yourself from a charge that never existed. It's a cunning move, because while you strive to clear your image, they maintain control of the field. Stoicism offers a clear way out of this trap. Do not accept roles that do not belong to you. Marcus Aurelius said that no one can make you feel guilty without your consent. And in this case, guilt is the tool that the manipulator wants to drive into your conscience. If you fall, you end up carrying a weight that doesn't belong to you. If you keep your cool, the attempt is revealed as empty. Answering this question does not mean entering a war of arguments, but maintaining your axis. You can calmly reply, "I'm not attacking, I'm just expressing a point," and close the topic without allowing the conversation to drag on. You can even choose not to respond, making it clear that you are not willing to carry made-up accusations. Silence here is not evasion, it's a wall against manipulation. Epictetus taught that people cannot harm us, only our interpretations of their actions can. If you see this question as a personal attack, you will get agitated and lose yourself in emotions. But if you see it for what it really is, a strategy to unsettle you, then it has no power over you. You understand that you don't need to defend yourself from ghosts, but to stand firm in the clarity of your intention. Seneca said that the wise person is not upset by offenses, because they understand that self-worth does not depend on what others say. Applied here, it means that you don't need to prove that you are innocent of a false accusation. Your dignity remains intact as long as you don't give up your calm. The real attack is not what they say, it's the effect they achieve in you, and that power only you decide whether to give it to them or not. In everyday life, this type of manipulation is common. It can appear in a couple's argument, at work, or even among friends, and it always works the same way. Shift the focus of attention to you so that the other can evade their responsibility. Stoic practice trains you not to be dragged into this game. Instead of reacting with anger or long justifications, you choose to maintain serenity. The manipulator feeds off your reaction, but if they don't get it, they are left powerless. The next time you are asked this question, remember that you are not the fire they want to point out. You are the guardian of your calm, someone who doesn't need to justify every word as if it were a crime. The real attack is not yours. It's the hidden intention behind that question. And when you don't play that game, manipulation becomes a failed attempt that reinforces your inner strength. 5. Don't you understand what I meant? Words can be like smoke. They disperse in the air and leave room for everyone to interpret them. But when someone uses this manipulative question, that smoke turns into a curtain that pretends to cover the truth. Don't you understand what I meant? Does not seek to clarify anything, it seeks to make you feel clumsy, guilty for not grasping the supposed intention behind their phrases. It is an attempt to put you at a disadvantage, to make it seem like you failed to understand, when in reality it was the other person who threw ambiguous or contradictory messages. The manipulator relies on this tactic to avoid taking responsibility for their own words. Instead of accepting what they said, they turn the situation around and make it your problem, as if the inability to understand was yours and not a consequence of their lack of clarity. Here is the poison. They want you to doubt your interpretation, to feel that you do not grasp things, to start questioning your intelligence or your listening skills. Stoicism teaches not to let the opinions of others become internal chains. Epictetus repeated that it is not the things themselves that disturb us, but the judgments we make of them. And here, the wrong judgment would be to believe that it is really you who does not understand, when the truth is that the manipulation is in the way the question is formulated. If you accept the blame, you give up your security and become the perfect target for future attacks. The answer is not in justifying yourself or entering into an endless debate. The key is to return responsibility to its place. You can calmly reply, "You expressed that to me and that's how I understood it." Or, if that's not what you meant, clarify it better. With these responses, you do not fall into the trap of blame and force the other person to take charge of what they really communicated. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that the mind should be like a walled city, capable of resisting external onslaughts. In the face of this question, Your wall is the conviction that you are not obliged to carry other people's interpretations. If your words or actions were reasonable based on what you heard, then you have nothing to apologize for. Manipulation loses strength when you understand that your dignity does not depend on demonstrating perfect understanding, but on maintaining clarity in the face of attempts to confuse. Seneca also warned about the power of language and how it can be used to deceive. Here, his advice comes to life. Do not allow ambiguous words to become invisible chains that trap you. Confusion does not always arise in you, it is often deliberately sown so that you give ground. In practice, this trap appears in common discussions. A partner who evades responsibility, a boss who does not want to acknowledge a mistake, a friend who tries to get his way, always with the same pattern, blaming you for not understanding. But if you apply Stoic teaching, you do not react with anger or submission. You stand firm, calmly point out the reality, and force the other person to be clear. The next time someone tells you, "Don't you understand what I meant?" do not fall into the temptation to justify yourself or to apologize for something you did not do. Maintain your serenity and respond in a way that the burden returns to whom it belongs. Because understanding is not always your duty, but expressing yourself with truth and coherence always is. And when you remember this, you will discover that no one can make you feel incapable if you do not allow it. 6. Is it not your fault? Guilt is like a shadow that always finds a way to follow you, even when the sun shines brightly. The manipulator knows this and uses the question, "Is it not your fault?" as a precise weapon. It is not thrown to seek justice, but to burden you with a weight that does not belong to you, so that you lower your head and accept responsibilities that are not yours. The intention is simple: to make you feel small, to make you bend and end up apologizing even when you did nothing wrong. The problem with this trap is that it directly attacks one of the most potent emotions of the human being. Poorly managed guilt can become an invisible chain that limits every decision, because the one who feels guilty believes they must compensate, serve, or remain silent. The manipulator knows this and takes advantage. If they manage to make you say, "Yes, maybe it was my fault," they no longer need to argue further, because they won the psychological battle at that moment. Stoicism offers a powerful antidote here: to separate what really depends on you from what does not. Epictetus insisted that no one can make you responsible for what is out of your control. If something did not arise from your conscious decisions, it is not your responsibility to carry it. And this principle is fundamental to prevent unjust guilt from becoming a weapon against you. When you face this question, the key is to curb the impulse to apologize immediately. Breathe and analyze. Is it really your responsibility what is being discussed? Or is it an attempt to shift someone else's mistake onto your shoulders? If it is the former, a Stoic recognizes their part and learns from it, because admitting true guilt strengthens character. But if it is the latter, the answer must be firm. Do not accept others' burdens. Do not confuse humility with submission or responsibility with emotional servitude. Marcus Aurelius taught that justice begins with oneself, and that means treating oneself fairly. You cannot be an unjust judge of yourself by condemning yourself for everything that happens around you. Faced with a "is it not your fault?" the correct attitude is to return the gaze calmly and respond clearly, "No, this does not depend on me." You do not need to raise your voice or give long explanations. Just stand firm and do not let emotional pressure bend you. Seneca also warned about how excessive guilt can be more destructive than the original mistake. He said that no one is freed by punishing themselves beyond what is necessary. Applied to this case, it means that even if you made a mistake, prolonging guilt does not make you more noble, only more vulnerable. Accepting, learning, and moving forward is a much stronger path than staying tied to an eternal accusation. In everyday life, this manipulation is common. It can appear in family discussions, in work environments, or in relationships. Always with the same pattern. Someone makes a mistake, but instead of assuming it, they throw the question that redirects the weight towards you. And if you are not clear, you end up carrying a backpack that was not yours. The Stoic practice here is essential. Remember the dichotomy of control. Ask yourself if the situation really arose from your voluntary actions. If the answer is no, then there is no reason to accept the blame. And if the answer is yes, then face it with dignity, learn from it and move forward without allowing anyone to prolong your punishment more than necessary. This is how this trap is broken. 7. Aren't you exaggerating? Exaggeration, when someone points it out with manipulative intent, works like a warped magnifying glass. They show you your experience as if it were inflated, as if what you felt, saw, or lived had no real value. Aren't you exaggerating? Is a question designed to diminish you, to make you believe that your perception is weak, unreliable, or ridiculous. They don't use it to seek balance, but to invalidate what you express and leave you in silence with the feeling of having overreacted. The real poison of this trap is that it attacks your confidence in your own judgment. If you accept the accusation, you end up doubting what you felt, what you saw, or what you know happened. You start to correct yourself, to minimize your words, to soften your stance. That's exactly what the manipulator wants, for you to belittle yourself for fear of appearing exaggerated. Stoicism proposes a very different path. Epictetus said that you should not give your judgment to others, because it is the only thing that truly belongs to you. If someone tries to make you feel like you're exaggerating, it doesn't mean you have to react with screams or with more force. It means you have to keep your inner clarity intact. The experience you lived is yours. It cannot be discarded because someone tries to make it small. The best way to respond to this question is not to justify yourself, nor to belittle yourself, but to hold your perspective calmly. You can answer serenely, "This is what I perceived," or "I speak from what I lived," and leave the conversation there. Don't get into endless discussions to convince the other that your experience is valid, because if you do, you've already fallen into the trap. Strength lies in showing that your vision does not depend on their validation. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that the truth does not change, even if no one believes it. This principle is a shield against the accusation of exaggeration. If you know that what you said reflects reality as you perceived it, you don't need to soften it for the other to accept it. Your task is not to convince, it is to maintain your dignity. And if someone decides to reduce what you express, that speaks more of their lack of empathy than of your supposed exaggeration. Seneca also warned that whoever gets used to minimizing their emotions to please ends up living under the judgment of others. This is an invisible prison. You cannot build inner peace if every time you speak, you wonder if you will sound exaggerated to others' ears. True freedom arises when you accept what you feel and express it clearly without the need to embellish it or diminish it due to external pressure. In daily life, this manipulation is common in couple discussions, family conflicts, or work environments. When you point out a problem, when you express discomfort or pain, the other responds with this type of question to deactivate your voice. If you don't have clarity, you end up silent, thinking that maybe you exaggerated, that what you had was not that important. This is the perfect ground for manipulation to grow. Stoic practice teaches you to see this situation as training. Every time someone tries to make you feel like you're exaggerating, use it as a reminder that your inner judgment is stronger than any external comment. You don't need to react with anger. It's enough to stand firm in your stance without reducing or enlarging it, simply showing that your voice does not go silent. This is how you defeat this trap. With clarity and serenity, with the conviction that your perception does not need approval from others. 8. What if all of this is just in your head? The mind is like a vast ocean. Sometimes its waters are clear and calm, other times they are turbulent and confusing. Those who manipulate know that in this ocean there is a vulnerable space, doubt about your own perception. What if all of this is just in your head? Is not a question seeking truth. It's an anchor thrown into the depths of your mind to start sinking you into insecurity. If you fall, you end up believing that maybe you exaggerated, that you made up what you lived, or that your emotions have no value. The aim of this trap is simple: to make you doubt yourself. If they manage to make you question your memory, your emotions, or your judgment, they no longer need to refute anything else. You become your own enemy, correcting yourself, apologizing, and doubting every step you take. It's a form of gaslighting, a psychological mechanism that blurs the line between the real and the imagined. The manipulator doesn't need to shout or impose. Just planting the seed of uncertainty is enough for you to destroy your own security. Stoicism teaches not to allow the external to dictate the value of the internal. Epictetus pointed out that freedom begins when you understand that your judgment is the only thing that no one can take away from you. Faced with this question, that teaching is vital. Your mind is not a weak place at the disposal of others. It is a space that you must protect with discipline and clarity. If someone tries to convince you that everything is in your head, remember that your experience is valid and your perception is a fact that does not require the permission of others. The way to respond is not to fall into despair to prove what you feel, but to stand firm in what you know. You can calmly reply, "This is real for me," or "I know what I lived," and leave it at that. You don't need endless evidence or extensive explanations. The serenity with which you affirm your truth is more powerful than any argument the manipulator tries to force. Marcus Aurelius said that the calm mind is invulnerable because it does not depend on external noise. That idea becomes your shield. If your conviction is based on inner clarity, no phrase disguised as doubt can take it away from you. Even if others try to minimize what you experienced, you are not obliged to accept it as true. The truth is not negotiated with those who seek to manipulate it. Seneca warned that he who loses confidence in himself is exposed to be ruled by anyone. That is the essence of this manipulative question: to make you doubt yourself in order to dominate you later. Stoic practice, on the other hand, strengthens your internal confidence. It doesn't mean believing yourself infallible. It means knowing that your perception has value and that you don't need anyone's approval to uphold what you've lived. In everyday life, this trap can appear in couples' arguments, family conflicts, or work relationships. It arises when you express a pain, a discomfort, or a limit, and the response you receive is that everything is in your head. The goal is to disarm you, to silence you, and to stop you from insisting. If you lack clarity, you fall into the silence of doubt, believing that perhaps everything was a product of your imagination. Stoic practice turns that moment into an exercise of strength. Each time you face this question, remind yourself that the experience you lived is real for you, and that is enough. You don't need others to recognize it for it to have value. Your task is to maintain calm, protect your clarity, and not surrender your judgment to those who seek to poison it. Thank you for staying until the end of the video. If you watched the whole thing, comment "I am Stoic" as our secret signal to know that you're a true student of Stoicism. Don't forget to subscribe and give the video a like if you enjoyed it. See you in the next video, and remember, keep cultivating your Stoic mind.